Welcome to Rise to Lead, the podcast where heart-driven leaders come together to inspire and innovate. They will share actionable tips and insights that help you lead your team more successfully, advance your career or business as a leader, achieve greater impact, and experience deeper fulfillment. I'm your host, Regina Huber, guiding you through deep conversations about leadership that's rooted in service, freedom, and the desire to leave a positive mark on the world. Welcome to today's show, where I have the honor to introduce a friend from Zimbabwe, Justine Chinoperekweyi, who has a lot of great projects, and we've done some of them together, like a webinar series in collaboration with a university in Zambia, and some other online sessions focused on leadership, focused on humanizing the workplace, and related topics. And we're still planning to do an in-person event in Zimbabwe someday, I guess. So welcome to the show, Justine.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here, and I appreciate the work that you are doing in this space.
Thank you so much. And I'm saying the same. And I'm so delighted to have you on today. Let me introduce you properly first to our audience before we start, okay?
Thank you.
Dr. Justine Chinoperekweyi is an organization development and design practitioner. He supports individuals, work groups, and organizations to embrace whole system change and transformation. Justine is an OD author, educator, and researcher. He serves as CEO of the Center for Organization Leadership and Development, COLD. This is the acronym, right? And president of Organization Leadership and Development Network, OLDN. Justine serves as board member of the International Society for Organization Development and Change in the USA, and he facilitates programs in Zimbabwe and is also serving clients in Saudi Arabia and beyond. Justine is the 2020 Communicating OD Knowledge Award winner by Organization Development Network USA. Justine, again, welcome to Rise to Lead. It's wonderful to have you on with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
In just a few sentences, tell us who you are and why you do what you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am an organization development and design practitioner, so much committed to the field of organization development and leadership development, particularly informed by the need to elevate humanity, bring presence to human systems, and supporting work groups, individuals, and organizations to embrace whole system change, whole system transformation, which I believe is so critical at this moment in time.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, thank you for doing this work. Very, very important. So tell us why you are passionate about heart-centered leadership in particular, and what does heart-centered leadership even mean to you in your mind?
Yes, I get this based on my lived experiences working in organizations and seeing the need to put people at the center of the design of any intervention, people at the center of leadership conversations, which brings issues around empathy, because when people come to workplaces, when people are engaging with leadership, they have a lot that they are carrying. And it takes the heart of a leader to really engage, to interact, understand, and put themselves in the shoes of the people that they will be leading. So heart-centered leadership is bringing that empathetic leadership to the table, engaging and interacting with people as human beings, understanding their lived experiences, what they are encountering, and what they bring to the table, appreciating that everyone has potential that they bring to organizations or to societies. And I feel this is a missing link in a lot of leadership conversations as leaders focus more on results and put the people of the periphery of leadership conversations.
Right, and people are the ones who bring the results and create the results. They produce the results. So why is that, right? It's interesting. And yes, we want to talk more about that. You're absolutely right. People are the heart of any organization, as I like to say. And they are also yeah, I don't know any organization that could not exist without the people. So why are we not focusing more on this heart-centered connection between people, especially as leaders?
Yes, and that's all what leadership is about, creating that connection, co-creating intervention, the compassion of working with people as people, and elevating people's enduring capabilities. But we see in most leadership conversations so much focus on systems, on processes and plans, while relegating the people who are actually the heart of the organizational intervention design. So there is definitely a need for a new narrative there.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned compassion, because I always say compassion is empathy in action. Empathy alone doesn't really do much. We can be very empathetic with people, but we can also even abuse of our empathy because we feel other people, so we could manipulate them better. And that's not what we want as heart-centered leaders, of course. So what we really, really want is compassion, and that compassionate behavior. Yes.
Yeah.
Now,
It has its own practices as well. So
right,
we really need to stretch our leadership beyond just empathy, because most leaders would then say, I know what you are feeling, I know what you are experiencing, but what do we do after that knowing, after that understanding?
right,
That's compassion then comes in. We build connection, we engage meaningfully and generatively, which is so critical.
exactly. And connections happen through the heart, and compassion comes from the heart. Um,
Let's go.
okay, so we want to talk specifically today about new leadership and business consciousness. It's a topic that I have chosen among the topics that you have suggested to me because, as you know, I'm also very passionate about this topic, and I've written several articles on specifically new business consciousness, one of which was titled The New Business Consciousness of Love, Compassion, and Co-Creation. And I know that you're familiar with this article because we've talked about it, and it's still somewhere on my website if people want to find it. And the other one I wrote was actually for a publication that you invited me to write for, and I wrote about it in the context of Africa, and also particularly about this business consciousness and how we create it through our education systems, right? How it starts in school with education, because as you know, Justin, I'm not a fan of our current schooling system, which I believe doesn't even deserve to be called an education system, in my very humble opinion, right? And through our conversations in the past, I know that you're also passionate about this topic. So about education in particular, I'm so passionate about it because I think that we are missing very important topics that we don't even touch on in school, like more creative minds, like taking care of ourselves, our bodies, etc. There's so many, and I've covered a lot of those, not all, but a lot in my article. And but this is only one piece of it, right? So it starts with the children because they are our future leaders. But first of all, what do you think why we even need a new business consciousness, and specifically also a new leadership consciousness? Why do you think we need that?
Thank you. Yeah, I do concur. We really need a new leadership and business consciousness if we look at the issues that are happening around us in organizations, in societies, and even at family level. So there is so much reliance on traditional leadership narratives and business consciousness, which to me has really failed to amplify and awaken people's enduring capabilities around creativity, capabilities around being adaptable, curiosity, and that reliance on traditional leadership so much puts the leader at the center of interventions design without co-creation of interventions with the people in the system. So in my practice as an organization development practitioner, we believe in process consultation, engaging the people in the system. But you would see in most organizations when they are doing strategic planning, for example, they take a few colleagues at the top of the organization's hierarchy, put them on a retreat, spend 3 days on a retreat somewhere, and then come up with what they call a strategy, which they want to impose on the organization. So a new leadership and business consciousness then awakens leadership to the reality that everyone in an organization is important, everyone in an organization has something to contribute, and it's not only a select few, those who have titles that we so much glamorize in our organizations. And that is where now we see in organizations, people learn to be helpless when they are in a traditional leadership stance and they're just waiting for the leader to make decisions on their behalf. They just have to buy into what the leaders will have said. So a new leadership consciousness from where I stand is about amplifying and awakening people's enduring capabilities and creating that safe and brave space for people to be people and to work at optimal potential, which I believe is critical and is really transformative and regenerative to our organizations.
That is so well said. And my next question was going to be, how does this express itself in practice? But we've already really touched on it. So when we put those people that we call authorities, right, which is like really not internal authority, it's external authority that comes with a title or a role or a position, and you know, and we use that instead of this internal authority that is much more powerful in a different way, and it includes our teams, and the focus is really on the people, the focus is on the team, because heart-centered is of course also people-centered or people-focused, as we sometimes call it, or people-centric, depending on what your favorite term for that is, right? And yeah, so, but have you seen any examples of using newer paradigms? As you may recall, Justine, I have this new framework that I have developed, which is actually called the New Paradigm Leadership Framework, right? And where we talk about mind, message, heart, and trust as the four central puzzle pieces. Now, but you know, have you seen any examples where people have implemented these new paradigms, to call it something, or new ways of doing business, new ways of doing leadership with this new consciousness, and what did that look like, or are you working on something like that with somebody right now?
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, I think my work revolves around that, and I'll make mention of a client that we are working with in Saudi Arabia, who engaged us sometime last year, and he said we need to embed a new culture, we need new values in our organizations, and ensure that people really operate at full potential. And he started interacting with his people differently, opening that space. Because in most organizations, leaders say we have an open door policy, but the door is actually closed. Literally, no one walks through that door to engage in a meaningful and generative conversations with their leader. So we went through a mindset shift, a leader shift, as you put it, to ensure that the leader accommodates, opens the space, interacts with his staff members, about 150 of them, as human beings. And he was so humble enough to say, let's engage. What leadership practices and values do I need to manifest in my organization? And one of the values is that of co-creation. And they really embraced co-creation in their organization. bringing the leaders together. And for your own information, this is an organization that had started in 1983, but had not had a management meeting. You know, the culture in the Middle East, they'd never had a meeting. They had their first meeting sometime in June of 2023, and it was a wow moment for them to bring the leaders together. And their first meeting, they had nothing to share really, because it was like a culture shock. Where is this coming from? But now the leaders are meeting weekly. They are co-creating interventions. They are engaging in training and development that is really generative and transformative. They are working together without putting this CEO at the center of decision making in that case. So that is an amazing case of an organization that was operating without people meeting, and now they are co-creating, they are working as one and manifesting values that are generative.
Well, that is a great, great example. Thank you for sharing that. And I know that you, of course, in the past also did a lot of work in the UAE and in the Middle East, because you were actually based there for some time. And yes, so, you know, in other countries, people say people are meeting too much. They are spending too much time in meetings. But of
Yeah.
course, it depends what type of meetings, right? Because sometimes we have meetings and they are really not necessary, or they are maybe just not productive, or they are not meeting our goals because we don't have the meetings in the right way, or we don't have the right people in the room, or whatever the issue is there, right?
Yeah,
So
I
yeah.
agree. I
Mhm.
agree with that. And I did a
Yeah,
bit of research on how do we make meetings effective and
right.
generative. Because yes, research shows that 90% of meetings are just a waste of time. And there's really need for a new narrative as well when it comes to how leaders design their meetings and facilitate those meetings, because most of these meetings are really a waste of time, and they're just a routine, and people get bored to attend those meetings. So in this organization, we had to put in a design framework that ensures that people actually enjoys these meetings, and we had to remove the leader from the center of hosting those meetings. So
Mhm.
the art of hosting, in how we then facilitate those generative leadership development conversations, is so critical. So rather than meetings, that's a traditional term. I believe in dialogues, conversations, rather than meetings, because if it's a meeting, it's structured, it's put a center to someone who is chairing that meeting. But how about we facilitate dialogues, conversations around the organization, around the direction that we are taking? And I think that has been working for them for now.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yes, and I do believe that structure is still helpful, right? And I think you probably agree. But it's just like, okay, how am I communicating also the structure in advance, so people can actually prepare maybe something meaningful? They can make a meaningful contribution. They can feel better about making that contribution because they are prepared, and all these different types of things that flow into that, yes, willingness to even participate in the meeting, because we have different types of personalities. Some personalities are always wanting to participate, and some other personalities are a little bit less outgoing, maybe a little bit more introverted. And we also want to, especially in team meetings, we want to bring everybody to a place where they can share both their ideas, their suggestions, and their concerns, or their questions, their requests for support, maybe. So yes, and how do you ensure that everybody feels safe or encouraged to share in a meeting?
Yeah, it first starts with the so-called leader, the extent to which they understand and manage power dynamics,
Mhm.
and the behaviors and leadership styles and practices that they manifest every day. because we should not tell people that this is a safe environment. In most cases, people get into a meeting and the leaders will be telling people, this is a safe environment, feel free to share whatever you want. Once that is happening, it shows that something is very wrong. People
I
need
love it.
to naturally feel that this is a safe environment without the leader reinforcing that it's a safe environment, feel free to contribute. So as leaders, we need that self-introspection. We need to study as you get into the meeting room, the environment that you create. So it's not something that you manifest on during the meeting. It's something that actually have to be a lived value, manifested every day, so that people feel free and safe around you. So a rewiring of the leadership practices and rewiring of the leadership mindsets is critical. And then people feel that this is a safe, a brave environment for us to contribute, rather than telling people and directing people to say, feel free to share. Once I get into a space where I'm told this is a safe environment, I know it's not safe. There's something really wrong in
Right.
this.
I love it because, yes, it has to shine through you, just like, with leadership presence or leader presence, it really needs to shine through you. A lot of that is also in that context. I speak about energy. What's the energy you're showing up with? And that is very comparable. And I love that you said, okay, it has to come naturally, organically, without having to say it, because once you have to say it, why do you even have to say it, right? And it has to do also with that, what I call leadership. Thanks for mentioning that earlier, because it starts with the leader, him or herself. That's where it starts. And that's when it ripples off into the team, into other leaders they work with, other stakeholders, and eventually other teams, and into the entire organization, if there's enough critical mass of it, right? So yeah, I think that's a very important point to mention. Thank you for doing that. Another topic I would like to talk about is competition versus co-creation, because I know we're both fans of co-creation. So, I believe that we invest so much precious energy in competition that we could really use to create something meaningful, uh, to improve our relationships, to improve our productivity, to advance our careers, whatever it is for everybody, right? We could use that energy that we put into competition for so many things. Do you agree, Justin?
I fully agree. And in our context, Zimbabwean context and African context, it's
Mhm.
unfortunate that we still glorify competition. And
Oh, here too, everywhere.
yeah, and there is need for
Yeah.
an awakening that power in synergy and rather than reward systems that promote competition, policies that promote competition in organizations. So this whole issue about heart-centered leadership and the new leadership narrative is pointing us towards really reviewing and rethinking some of those practices.
Mhm.
There is power in co-creation, and traditional leadership systems in Africa, for example, they really value co-creation, people coming together in dialogues that are meaningful, that are generative. And as people leave that dialogue session, they are coming up with something that is really transformative in nature. So a shift from competition to co-creation is fundamental if we are to move our organizations and societies forward. And that starts with rewiring of leadership mindsets.
Right. And again, that's why reforming and changing the education, I actually am hesitant to call it education system. I'm very, I want to be very mindful about the words I use sometimes, because I'd like to find a different word for it. because the current education system, that's what it is, it plays into the system. And we need to really recreate education in a way that we're not so focused on competition, on getting the best grades and just for the sake of it, right? We want to learn something more meaningful, we want to study more meaningful practices, we want to know where to get the information. Somebody once said, I think it was Cliff High, he said, the future of education is not about having all these different topics, but about knowing where you can find the information, because everybody is so different and everybody has different interests and talents and if you will, a different purpose in their lives. And we force specific topics on children that they may not even do anything with in their lives. And as you know, also, Justine, we learn a lot of stuff that is not even true in school. However, there's so much more that is left out. There are abilities that are not developed. We are not teaching children to value their own talents, to explore their unique brilliance, their genius. Sometimes, and there are actually experiments with this. There's research about this, right? Children are more genial before they enter school, because we are educated out of our genius to a big extent. I'm not saying everything is like this, okay? There are many very well-intentioned teachers. There are many, that there are people who want to do their best in our schools, and it's commendable to be a teacher. Really, it's not an easy job.
Yes.
I totally commend teachers and professors and everybody who does this job. I just think that we have to rethink the entire concept behind it. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I like you bringing these points up because this is a project I'm working on and supporting a new ministry in Zimbabwe, a
Mhm,
ministry on skills audit and development. And one thing that we are working on is we are calling it a skills revolution,
mhm,
which is actually a rethinking of the education system. I'll put that in quotes in the country because there was so much focus on academic orientation. Everyone has to go through the academic route without really developing and amplifying people's capabilities, their talents. And now Zimbabwe is introducing heritage-based education, which is more centered on people's capabilities and abilities.
mhm.
And
Okay.
that is a critical revolution that is needed. And it facilitates that shift from competition to co-creation, which is fundamental.
Right. Okay. Yes. Absolutely. I love that you're doing this work. So if there's any way to collaborate in the future, I love this work because I believe that little children are in a place where they still dream. We so often hear dreams don't come true, plans come true, but there is no plan without a dream, because dreams become visions and visions become plans eventually. And and I believe that we must not suppress this ability to dream, because it's an ability to imagine, to innovate, to bring new ways of doing, to bring new products, new types of services. So if we suppress the dreaming, the daydreaming of children, then what we really do is we suppress their imagination, and that also suppresses each individual's genius.
Yeah,
So
that's powerful.
go ahead.
The issue of imagination. I love
Yes.
that one of the enduring capabilities that really needs attention, that we really need to amplify
Mhm.
in leadership, because the traditional leadership narrative says only those at the top of the hierarchy can be imaginative, and everyone else just has to follow suit. And that's really something that we need to do.
Right. It's about creativity. It's about this creative power that we we're all born with. We just need to be really in a position where, in a mindset, but also in that setting of encouragement to use it, especially children, because children, very young children, don't have filters. So they take everything, they absorb everything. They're like that sponge. Even in older years, we also do the same. We just are maybe a little bit more perceptive, because now we can make conscious decisions more easily than very young children. However, we don't always do it either. We are also still being conditioned right now.
Yeah, yeah.
That's something we also need to take into account and be aware of, especially as leaders. So we can also, sorry, go ahead.
It's very critical, and that's where the rewiring, and that's where these podcasts are important, to speak into the critical issues that as leaders we need to look into and reform,
Mhm.
to manifest those enduring capabilities: imagination, curiosity, adaptability, and innovation. And
Yes.
in our context, we are now telling people to be innovative. We don't have to tell people to be innovative. Again, it has to shine through you. People need to manifest that naturally, rather than putting them in a line and say, bring us an innovative idea. That's not how innovations come. They have
Right.
to come naturally and shining through a person.
Yes, I love this, because I just did a few trainings also on flexible thinking and on creative thinking. And, they're all about this topic. Why do we even have to have those trainings? They shouldn't even be necessary. I mean, they are great trainings, but in an ideal world of that we would wish for, it shouldn't be necessary. Now, mindset. Okay, very, very important. In my powerful leadership transformation framework, I talk about a self-empowering mindset and heart set, which again goes into the direction of heart-centered leadership, of course. It also is a heart set for the individual, because we make our best decisions when we're connected with our hearts. We can find the most courage when we're connected with our hearts, because courage comes from the heart and fear comes from the mind, especially when we are operating with a self-limiting or a limited mind, right? And we really need to be aware as leaders of what is or could be limiting us, so we can address it. And so we can then also address it with our team members in a meaningful way. Because when we know ourselves better, it's easier to understand others. Once we understand ourselves, it's easier to understand others. It's about self-awareness, which then leads to better self-leadership. Would you like to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I normally refer to the Aikido principle,
Mhm.
the Japanese Aikido principle, and
Yes.
one of their principle is Masagatsu Agatsu, which says true victory starts from within. You need to conquer your inner demons. So in our leadership development programs, we always start with the question, what is limiting you to operate effectively, optimally as a leader? And in most cases, you realize that there are some inner demons that the leader will be harboring and need to really work on. Issues around anger, for example, and some of these coming from your background, perfectionism, some of the issues that affect leadership effectiveness.
Mhm.
So true victory starts from within. Conquer your inner demons. Deal with those limiting beliefs. And once you attend to those self-limiting beliefs, it becomes easier for you to engage others, to interact with others, to value other people. But when a leader is bringing these inner demons, anger, perfectionism, and competition, wanting to be the best than everybody else, they limit your effectiveness to manifest your enduring capabilities. So most leaders, they are in a psychological pit. They've created a world of their own, which they need exposure for a shift in mindset and connecting with others meaningfully and generatively. So that Masagatsu Agatsu principle in Aikido is so fundamental and helps us in rewiring and reforming leadership mindsets.
Right, right. That's absolutely, absolutely correct. Thank you for sharing that. Great, great, great approach. Emotional intelligence, knowing your triggers, what triggers you, so you can catch it in the moment, for example, but there's a lot more to it. I'm actually going to interview a young guy soon who technically is not in a leadership role as such. However, he has such high emotional intelligence. I've gotten to know him over time, online only, and working with this man. And I have found that he has such high emotional intelligence that I absolutely want to interview him for this podcast as well. So yes, absolutely aligned with what you just said, Justin. Now, of course, Justin, we could go on about this topic and many other topics forever. But let's just leave it at this for today and maybe record another episode in the future about some other topics that we might find interesting for our audience. Now, where can people find you online, and maybe also share where they can find your books?
Thank you so much. Online, I'm on LinkedIn, Justine Chinoperekweyi. You can also get me on a website, www.drjustine.net, or through our organization, www.centraold.com. I'm all over the show. If you just search me through my name, you will find a lot of the work that I'm doing.
I'm absolutely sure they will. And your publications, we can always also add some of those links if you'd like in the description. So whatever you send me in terms of links, I can add.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think the co-creating talent and organization development book is really connected to this work.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Any last words of wisdom, something we have not touched on yet that you feel like you absolutely need to share with our audience today?
Just to emphasize the need for a new leadership and business consciousness, and the need for us to collaborate, work together in terms of manifesting this leadership consciousness, because the world needs that, and we have a role to play to manifest that.
Absolutely. And this is also why I created this podcast. I couldn't agree more. We're very well said. Thank you so much again for being on with us today. Thank you all for listening. Thank you so much for being on with us today, Justin. And stay tuned for the next episode.
Thank you. Thank you. The pleasure is mine.
Thank you for tuning in to Rise to Lead. Keep shining your light, standing up for what's right, and inspiring others to step into their brilliance. If you like this episode, please give it a 5-star rating and subscribe to the Rise to Lead podcast on your preferred podcast app. Until next time, it's Regina Huber, and in the meantime, remember to rise to lead.